Hola, ¿qué tal a todos? Muchas gracias por acompañarnos nuevamente. Hoy estamos en un encuentro muy especial, nada más ni nada menos que con Rickards, que vino a nuestro país a traernos novedosas y muy interesantes conclusiones acerca de lo que está pasando hoy en los mercados y qué pasa con las monedas a nivel global. Hello, Jim, how are you?
Fine, nice to be with you, Diego.
Okay, thank you. Antes de comenzar a preguntarle a Jim acerca de sus opiniones sobre lo que está pasando en los mercados y en la economía global, déjenme hacer una pequeña introducción de quién es Jim Rickards. Jim trabajó por más de 35 años en los mercados de Wall Street, trabajó para la CIA, el organismo de inteligencia de los Estados Unidos, y también para el Pentágono, el organismo de defensa de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. A su vez, estuvo involucrado con el rescate financiero del fondo Long Term Capital Management en el año 1994, que puso en vilo a el mercado internacional. Hoy Jim nos trae sus enseñanzas, sus vivencias y sus opiniones para que entre todos podamos salir adelante de la próxima gran crisis que se viene. En esto coincide y habla fuertemente en el último libro, La Gran Caída, un libro que revela mucho sobre su parecer acerca de lo que será el mundo en los próximos años. Usted debe estar preparado para poder salir fortalecido y ganar dinero para ello. ¿Cómo fue el reclutamiento que le hizo el Pentágono y la compañía de agencia de inteligencia americana en los años cuando empezaba a ser profesional?
My involvement, Diego, began after the attack on September 11th, 2001. And of course, that was a horrible tragedy from the U.S. perspective. But it was discovered that in the last 2 trading days before that attack, there was massive short selling of the 2 airlines, American Airlines and United Airlines. This took place in options markets. When you buy a put, you're making a bet that the stock is going to go down. The amount of put buying in those 2 days was almost 250 times the average daily volumes. This is very clearly insider trading. Some group knew about that attack in advance. So I was asked by the CIA to help them. They have a lot of intelligence expertise, but they did not have that much capital markets expertise. Why would they? It was not really part of the battle space during the Cold War. So they recruited a number of capital markets experts, myself and many others, and we began a project to ask ourselves, well, if there were going to be another attack, like 9/11, would there be a social network that knew about it? Would somebody be tempted to do some insider trading? Could you spot it, get a warrant, break down the door, and stop the attack? That was our mission. We weren't really there to investigate 9/11. That was left to the FBI and the SEC, our Securities Exchange Commission. Our job was to look forward and say, if it happened again, could we spot it? So we did a multi-year project. We bought a lot of technology, applied mathematics, physics, and a lot of other things. That was a very successful project. We actually built a working prototype that identified insider trading and a second terrorist attack in August 2006. That was the planes plot in the UK to blow up, kill thousands of Americans in midair. We actually got a signal on that before it happened. So then what happened is, based on all of that, I took those systems that we had created with my partners, and I was able to use them in financial markets to get very good predictive analytics and ability to see things before they happen, using the same kind of technology that we developed for the CIA. So that was the project we did for CIA. That was my role, but we were able to take that technology and now use it for investing purposes.
¿Estamos en condiciones de tener una nueva era de ataques terroristas?
Well, as I mentioned, the project we did for CIA was specifically counterterrorism. We were looking at for terrorists. Yeah. But once we invented this, we realized it could be used for many other things. It doesn't have to be a terrorist attack. It could be an attack from China, from Russia, from criminal gangs. It could come from many sources. So we realized we had created a tool that could be used for many other purposes. In 2009, I was asked by our Department of Defense, the Pentagon, to conduct a financial war game. Now this was more geostrategic. It was not a counterterrorism exercise. We did this at a top secret weapons laboratory outside of Washington, D.C. We played it over several days, and we had, like any war game, we had teams. So there was a Russia team, a China team, a U.S. team, etc. But we also had a team just for banks and hedge funds. We said if there's going to be a financial war, banks and hedge funds will be big players in that as well. We had a group of about 100 people. There were military people, but also CIA, FBI, Federal Reserve Bank, our central bank, U.S. Treasury, outside experts, myself and others. And one of the scenarios we did is one in which Russia and China would take their gold reserves, put it in a bank in Switzerland, in a vault in Switzerland, create a bank in London that would issue a new currency backed by the gold, and then say from now on, if you want Russian natural resource exports or Chinese manufactured goods, you have to pay for it in this new gold-backed currency. So it was sort of an attack on the dollar. Now, we encountered a lot of skepticism at the time. People said, well, that would never happen. But our job really was to look forward. Since that happened, since that war game in 2009, Russia has doubled its gold reserves. China has more than tripled its gold reserves. So China and Russia are actually behaving in the way we predicted for the Pentagon. The U.S. was in a financial war with Iran in 2012. The United States is in a financial war with Russia today because of sanctions over Crimea. So this financial warfare is going on. It's not a hypothetical threat, it's a real threat.
Interesante, ¿no? Rusia y China adquieren más reservas de oro y están intentando no usar más el dólar en diversas transacciones. You know that in Argentina and the whole Latin American region, China and Russia also are trying to become the dollar useless, yes, in their exchange trade with between both parts. Do you think that it's a phenomenon that will become more strengthened in the future, or you think that the Americas will not allow that policy?
Well, it is a very interesting point. You're correct. You know, when I was before I went to law school, I went to graduate school in international economics, and I was actually a Latin American studies major. And one of the things my old professors say is that really South America is very much an extension of their important trading relationship is with China, not so much with the United States anymore. Argentina has been buying gold. Brazil has swap lines between the Brazilian reais and the Chinese yuan. Now, what's going on? The Chinese currency, the yuan, it's being used as a trade currency. It's a little different than a reserve currency. Trade currency just means, you know, you and I trade. So I pay you in my currency, you pay me in your currency, and then we build up balances once a year, whatever will settle up. So you can have any currency, not necessarily the dollar as a trade currency. But to be a reserve currency, you need a bond market. Because, so let's say I earn a surplus trading with you and I have your currency. Well, what am I going to invest it in? I'm not going to leave it in the bank. I need to go out and buy bonds. And the problem with the Chinese yuan, they do not have a well-developed bond market. Because if you earn yuan trading with China, you have no place to put the money other than to spend it. So that's a problem. And this is why the U.S. dollar is still the dominant reserve currency, because we have the largest, most liquid bond market in the world. However, that could change. I think really what I see as the future kind of world money is not the Chinese yuan or the Russian ruble or even the euro. It's a world money. It's called the Special Drawing Right, the SDR. This is issued by the International Monetary Fund. And I do think that the United States and China are moving towards a kind of world money in these SDRs.
And do you think that we are closer to that even, that the yuan could become a SDR in the future, or near future, or long-term future?
Well, I think the global elites, and when I say elites, I'm not talking about some secret conspiracy. I mean, we know who they are. It's Madame Lagarde at the IMF, and the head of Janet Yellen at the Federal Reserve Bank, central bankers, finance ministers, professors, leading bankers around the world. This is what I mean by the global monetary elite. They are moving in this direction, but they're willing to move slowly. They wouldn't mind if it takes 10 or even 20 years. The next step in this process, people say, well, what is the SDR, the Special Drawing Right? It sounds complicated, but it's actually very simple. So the U.S. Federal Reserve can print dollars. The European Central Bank can print euros. Well, the IMF can print SDRs, and they do. They've done it many times. They've been around since 1969. Now, they don't use it to bail out insolvent banks. They only use it in a liquidity crisis. So you might not hear much about SDRs for a while, but the next time there's a liquidity crisis, something like 2008, when there's a global financial panic, they will print a lot of these SDRs and push them out there. But the next step, people say, what's behind the SDR? Well, there's really nothing behind it. It's just printed money. But the value of an SDR is calculated with reference to 4 currencies. It's the US dollar, the euro, pound sterling, and Japanese yen. So those are the 4 currencies. What they want to do is add a 5th currency, which is the Chinese yuan. You'll probably see that announcement next March 2016.
Jim, do you think that China will be the new America for the Latin American countries? I don't know, maybe 5 or 6, 7 years, or maybe earlier.
Well, the trade is quite extensive, of course. Latin America is very rich in natural resources, always has been, so that's very interesting to China. But at the same time, you have Embraer in Brazil. They build aircraft. China does not have a mature aircraft industry, so there's a lot of need for that. Tourism is a big factor. The Chinese have some money now, so they want to go all over the world, and a lot of attractive venues, destinations in Latin America, certainly copper from Chile. So you sort of go around the region. China is very, they have a lot of rice and they have some wet regions, but a lot of China is mountainous, a lot of it's desert, a lot of it is not very fertile. So, whether it's Argentinian beef or Chilean copper or Brazilian aircraft, you go around the region. There's a lot, Latin America has a lot to offer to China, so that trade relationship will grow. The problem is China has a lot of internal problems. So they've got too much debt. They've kind of run a Ponzi scheme, if you will. They've got inflated stock market, inflated real estate market, too much debt. There's a lot of capital flight coming out of China. So the Chinese economy is contracting. That could affect Latin America adversely in the short run.
Otro concepto importante, ¿no? China se está desacelerando económicamente y esto puede afectar a las economías latinoamericanas, sobre todo a aquellas que son muy dependientes de los commodities y de las materias primas. Por muchos años en la última década, sobre todo la economía argentina, también en Chile, también en Brasil, se han beneficiado de un crecimiento del precio de las materias primas y asimismo de las bajas tasas de interés. Ya vamos a hablar de Estados Unidos, pero me gustaría terminar de profundizar un poco más sobre China. Y le voy a preguntar a Jim si hay un cambio en el proceso estructural del crecimiento de China que está llevando a que los países latinoamericanos crezcan menos.
In the short run, yes. I think in the longer run, certainly the China-Latin America trade relationship will grow. I don't think there's any question about that. But in the short run, you're exactly right, Diego. They are more focused on their internal problems. They've created bubbles. For example, there was too much corporate debt. They borrowed a lot of money in U.S. dollars. So if you devalue the yuan against the U.S. dollar, if the dollar gets stronger, the value of that debt actually goes up. So the debt gets harder to pay. So they told their corporations, look, we want you to sell stock so you can use the money to pay off your debt. Well, what did they do with the stock? They sold it to the everyday Chinese, created a bubble with margin. Now that's collapsed, so people are quite angry about losing money in the stock market. Also, the elites in China, the so-called princelings, Communist Party members, heads of state-owned enterprises, wealthy Chinese, they're getting their money out. You go all over the world, I'm sure, from Montevideo to Melbourne, Australia, Vancouver, Canada, Istanbul, Turkey, the Chinese are buying up prime real estate, but they're getting their money out as fast as they can. So in the short run, China is more focused on its internal problems. Longer run, but Latin America has sort of a secret resource